A year ago, I completely avoided anatomy, but to create stories like my favorite artists, I knew that couldn't last. So I consumed as much knowledge as possible and applied it. Now I can do this. I've packaged my learnings into 5 practical tips so you can draw any pose, starting with tip 1. If you're starting from zero, you need to learn swift, expressive sketching to convey the essence of a pose. This starts with gesture drawing. Micheal Hampton explains this in his book and puts emphasis on the use of dynamic lines and using C and S curves to create flow, which we can then top off with wrapping lines that move across the form and add perspective. Finally, we'll add an indication of the ribcage and pelvis to add weight. The best references you should pick when practicing these are ones that are mid-action or about to poses. So as you can see here, I'm using C and S curves and just trying to get the overall energy of the pose. That's how you should start learning anatomy. If you can, make sure to do some gesture drawing practice every day. 10 minutes a day would be great. But we can't rely on these stick figure gesture drawings forever. Eventually, we need to delve into basic bone and muscle anatomy. But don't worry, you don't need to become a doctor for this. Just grab simple shapes and understand how the muscles function for drawing. So to do this, we begin by understanding landmarks, which aid in ribcage and pelvis placement. From there, we can learn the basic anatomy of the arms, legs, and head and connect everything with what are called T overlaps and pinching. Before tackling a full pose, it's best to quickly go over how each part works. And if you're familiar with the gym, this is going to be easy. The arms have 3 main parts: the delts, biceps, triceps, forearm, and elbow. The delts, or the deltoids, with 3 heads give a 3D appearance, forming the shoulder. The biceps pull and the triceps push, with one muscle passive and the other active depending on the movement. With the forearm, consider the twisting of the radius and the ulna and the wrapping characteristic of the forearm muscles when drawing. We don't need to have like a full in-depth understanding, but just having these basic shapes in mind can go a long way. With the legs, we have the quads, hamstrings, calf muscles, and the knee and ankle joints. The quads with 4 heads define the front thigh, with the hamstrings at the back, aiding in flexion. Their relationship is like the biceps and triceps. Calf muscles add shape to the lower leg and allow ankle movement. Putting it all together, the knee and ankle joints lock the overall form and proportions when illustrating legs. With the torso, look out for the chest, abs, and back muscles. The chest helps with arm movements and consists of 3 heads, while the abs provide core stability and bending and twisting. The back muscles shape the upper back and aid in extending the arms. The 2 most important back muscles to look out for are the traps and the lats. Understand their basic functions, the chest pushes, back muscles pull, and abs stabilize, and consider the bending and twisting when drawing the torso. Lastly, sketching the head and hands. So to sketch the head, use the Loomis method, and for the hands, use a hexagonal shape. Split the fingers into 3 tubes and consider the hand's functionality. So imagine a hollow part for holding things with padding around it. This approach enhances the realism of your sketches, and just this type of thinking really helped me with drawing hands. Practice sketching these individual muscles and understanding their functions daily with your gesture drawing, just like I'm doing here. Grab some reference of particular muscle groups or areas that you need some more clarity on and just start sketching, using contour lines to show the 3-dimensionality of the form. The explanations I gave of the muscles were very simplified, so I encourage you to, look into it more yourself. After a couple weeks of understanding gesture and basic muscle anatomy, we can combine the 2 and start sketching some more complex poses. We do this by grabbing some reference, capturing the gesture, and using what we learned from previous exercises. I'm still using lines here to show the form, and keep in mind I'm not putting that much detail on the features, but it's definitely a large step up from purely gesture drawing. Doing this will help us affirm everything we've already been practicing and get us drawing some full poses. After I learned to quickly sketch full poses, the next step for me was to add more clarity to it by using my understanding of value, and what that did was just make my drawings more believable. Instead of just using contour lines to indicate form, I painted it. And to do this, it's important that you've done all the previous points in sequential order, because we need to understand the forms of the muscles and how they work to paint in all the lumps and bumps and add value. If you're a bit iffy about this, check out this video where I go into more detail about how to learn value. It's pretty much painting in black and white. My process in doing this is the same as before. With one layer, I'm directly painting over my sketch and carving out the major shapes, and little by little, looking at all the smaller details until it's just a matter of defining all the little edges and cleaning up some transitions between planes. I didn't zoom in at all while painting this. What you're seeing in this time lapse is exactly what I saw. The only thing I did was use the liquify tool here and there, however. Once we can paint a full pose in black and white, we can try our hand at color. And I'll be honest, this was a lot harder. I struggled a lot trying to paint the face and ended up having to zoom in to try and fix it up a bit. I also switched my canvas black and white here and there to get a feel for the values, but most of the time I was working in color, using textured brushes at the start and glazing softer brushes over it to get a more convincing look, and making sure to color shift to warmer, more saturated variations of the local color as I move to shadow, and doing the opposite for light. Really, this exercise and the previous one is all about lining up what you see and making it as accurate as possible. It's definitely not easy, but I think doing these is a great test to see how far you've come, and you'll have the confidence to leap into more complicated poses and incorporate backgrounds for sure if you're able to do this.